my mom, being the chef, she would hire other immigrants, other refugees, and other migrants to come and work in our kitchen. And she would train them with job skills and send them on to bigger and better opportunities, and I was too young and stupid for a long time to understand that she was transforming lives. She was making such a huge difference, and she had the answer to the global migrant crisis. That was the difference that, she was making every single day, because that was her passion.
Hi, I'm Courtney Gumbleton, and welcome to the Founders Club podcast, the show where you'll hear the incredible stories of the unapologetically ambitious women founders who are redefining the wild world of entrepreneurship in Texas. Welcome back to the Founders Club. This is part 2 of my conversation with artist, philanthropist, and friend Jin-Ya Huang. In case you missed the first part, make sure to go back to the last episode and give it a listen. We'll be here when you get back. So let's talk a little bit about art again. Mm-hmm. So even in corporate America, you're still doing art, both at work and then personally.
I always had you're that third shift entrepreneur. That's a Todd Connor book, by the way. Cute, amazing. It must get and read.
I love when my guests provide book recommendations. Yes, please.
So that's another PLS.
That's also a book.
Yes, PLS classmate. Another veteran, actually, really amazing. And but I always had a side hustle. Always. It didn't matter if it was in art or, whatever, but always had a side hustle on the side that it was something. I just couldn't stop making art. I would be depressed if I didn't make art. I have to make art to survive. And so I just always had a creative outlet, and I was really fortunate that I worked in advertising, that I was always surrounded by creative people, but it still wasn't me producing art. And so I just always had that going somehow.
What was your earliest entrepreneurial experience looking back? Did you make bookmarks and sell them in second grade?
No, I think earliest.
What was your earliest hustle?
I think I always drew manga and try to get a buck or two out of people.
That was it. That was it.
I mean, but I never thought of it as an entrepreneur. Money makers. No. And because I never could afford, I was telling Lang, most kids had paper money to buy snacks at school, but I was the kid that was always saving the pennies. I always had hundreds of coins that I would take to the lunch lady or whoever's behind the snack counter, and they would always be like, "Oh, it's that girl again."
That change girl.
It's that change girl. And, and I lived up to that name, making change for the world. But that definitely was a huge issue. How can I get the snacks that most people are getting, but I can't afford? And I'm not going to ask my parents for the money. So how do I hustle this so I can do it? And I know most people can't draw like me. So was that it? And I guess that was it. I never really thought of it like that, but yeah.
So had you not discovered penny candy?
No.
Because penny candy's where it's at.
No, remember this was back home in Taiwan. So it was all it was those were expensive still penny candies. And so I was even looking at even just candy mangoes or taro ice cream, things that people didn't now it's fancy, right? Taro what,
Yeah, now that's Michelin star.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. It's what's that? It's tree bark.
Exactly. Yeah, just a purple root, but but yeah, that's what I was doing. Yeah.
So you are deeply engaged in the Dallas art community. When did you first develop a passion for art?
Well, I think, it started at 3, but really continuing to be that truth teller and making art that do the storytelling that happened all throughout school. And I think, you know, when I discovered photography, that was when I still remember my professors were like, you really did try in like sculpting and painting, but you suck as a painter. But photography, this is something else. You're painting with a camera. You can do this. Like, this is something that you should move forward with. And so I just started shooting, and it was like everything in sight, including self-portraits. And I think right after school was this series of self-portraits that I did that really caught people's eyes, and that's when I, you know, started showing galleries. And I think that storytelling was so much of my immigrant diaspora experience of like being half East, being half West, and not knowing where I belonged, that, you know, duality of those identities, and really trying to understand, you know, what that looks like, sounds like, and feels like. And so I was really telling a lot of those stories, and some of them being very abstract photography, you know, more representational and later in life. But definitely the idea was always there about, like, I even did like a whole series on aquariums because it was about my experience crossing the waters coming here, you know. And so that representation really matters, right? Telling those stories really matters, because I remember, you know, people would come up to me and just like say that they would cry looking at a piece because it reminded them what that experience was like. And it didn't require my bio or, you know, the title or explanation. It was literally them looking at this image and understanding what I was trying to convey. And that's powerful, that art, you know, as this universal language that can transcend, you know, all those boundaries, was amazing to me.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was exactly thinking, that's powerful. And then you said that.
Thanks.
So tell us about your social impact art to address racial equity. I think that I read something about the makeup industry and the caste system. What was this that you made?
Yeah, so
it sounded really cool.
Thank you. So that show was actually all about the currency of skin color. And for that particular show, I did a series of really actually existing makeup that's you can readily buy on Amazon, Target, Walmart, any site. It's all whitening products to make your skin lighter so you can access better treatment. And that was something that I had always grown up with, especially in Asian culture, that for centuries, people just thought that when you had darker skin, that meant you had to work outside as a farmer or as manual labor, and that if you had lighter skin, you were an aristocrat, and that you got to stay indoors, or as a scholar, that you're from, you know, a higher class. And so that caste system existed on purely of your skin color, and that actually was really exponentially amplified coming here to America, to learning about slavery and, you know, about the caste system that exists not only in India, but here in America. And so, you know, really seeing that it doesn't just happen in one part of the world, it happens in all corners around the globe, and trying to unpack that and saying, this is not right. And these are the inequities that, you know, come along with skin color. And particularly for women, you aren't actually able to marry to a higher class if you had a darker skin color. And, you know, a lot of actresses in Hollywood actually have talked about this. And it's what girls get told growing up. And, you know, and it's been instilled in women for so long. It's like, it's always about the fairy tale that, you know, if you do this, then the prince will come and save you from this, and you'll have a better life, and you know, get married, have kids, and live happily ever after. No, that's, you know, that's no one should be waiting for Superman, you know, and that was a part of what I try to unpack with that makeup installation was, you know, gathering all these products from soap to, you know, foundation to even just, lotions that supposedly whiten skin, that there's a lot of products out there that try to erase those boundaries of quote unquote classism and trying to pass as white. It's a huge issue. And I just wanted to really address that. Part of it was from my days of working in the beauty industry, and also growing up with a culture that really celebrated those horrible things. And I needed to walk away from that somehow. And so that was a part of that project. And so it's definitely interesting to learn about these things along the way. That's the thing. I've always known my why, my purpose, and my goals. And as a truth teller, as a social justice warrior, those are the things that I figure out how to amplify along the way. And hopefully people listen. And I'm glad that you actually, read about that installation. Thank you.
Yeah, it really is. It really is interesting.
Thanks.
Just the psychological and sociological aspects of it, because, they're trying to lighten their skin, but then white people put bronzer and blood, you know what I mean?
It's quote unquote healthy.
Yeah. And then it's like people with straight hair want curly hair, and people with curly hair. Yeah. I mean, this obviously goes way beyond what you want, but yeah, it's just sad.
Yeah. It's privilege comes in a lot of different ways.
So I think it is time to finally talk about BBBB.
Okay. Where do you want to start?
Well, I guess. So back in 2016, you launched Break Bread, Break Borders, a community-based catering business that created financial and social opportunities for local refugees. I guess it shouldn't be created, it's creates, right? Because you're still doing it.
Yes.
So what inspired your move from fashion to food?
Well, so...
Was it Chinese McDonald's?
It was that. It was that for sure. And it was actually wanting to run away from Chinese McDonald's that also did it. Because my parents actually, when they retired from the restaurant business, they asked me if I wanted to get into taking over the franchise. And I said no. I was like, I'm running to advertising and marketing. This is, restaurant hours are hard. And, it's insane, the amount of work that people pour into it to feed people. And while it was incredible, I just couldn't do it. I didn't want that to be like my life, because I remember my parents, were at the restaurant, 16, 18-hour days, and on their days off, their downtime, they volunteered. And, if it wasn't for my sisters and I, they would never have a day off, and they did all that for us. So we can have, we can afford education. And I just thought, you know what, I'm going to go run to fashion, something that's so opposite from food. Because I still remember every night I came home, my clothes always smelled like egg rolls. And it was like, no, I don't want to live like this for the rest of my life. And I just, I remember my baby sister got accepted to UT Austin, and she was like, see ya, wouldn't want to be ya. And, I stayed and went to UTD because I was like, well, I ought to help out with the restaurant business. And looking back, I'm so glad I did, because I got to spend more time with my mom and dad. And having all this, heritage from that, I saw in the kitchen, my mom, being the chef, she would hire other immigrants, other refugees, and other migrants to come and work in our kitchen. And she would train them with job skills and send them on to bigger and better opportunities, And I was too young and stupid for a long time to understand that she was transforming lives. She was making such a huge difference, and she had the answer to the global migrant crisis. I, really just didn't know that was the difference that she was making every single day, because that was her passion. And I thought, it's fine for mom, but we're just going to mark this as this part of our lives and move on. And she was diagnosed with multiple myeloma. And I remember my mom, having cancer, how tough that was every single day for her. But she tried different chemotherapies because we wanted her to stay alive. And out of our selfishness, we just really needed her to stick around, but she was in so much pain. And she fought with it for a long time, but we lost her in 2015. And it's around the holidays, and so these days are always just a little bit difficult. And initially I was thinking, what can I do with Mom? Yeah. I remember, she was too weak to do a lot of things. Like chemo would just take it out of her. But sometimes it would be okay to just, at least like stand up by the stove to cook like porridge, and I was thinking, I really want to do this, whatever Mom was doing when she was alive. And she always, always loved cooking because food is such an incredible equalizer. We had famous people that would come through, the restaurant, and it didn't matter, who they were or where they were from. My mom would remember their names, remember what they drank, and sometimes would have their food ready, even before they walked through the door, because they were, wrapping up something last minute in a car, on the phone, and they walk in and there'd be this hot plate of food, ready for them. And she just understood food in such a way, and she didn't just always cook like fast food, what we did at the restaurant. She would kind of give it her little twist, and she made people understand like Chinese food. It wasn't just like the really westernized, sweet and sour pork and triple fragrance. Like she would give her little twist, even though sometimes she's not supposed to, obviously, because of the franchise. But she would explain to people, oh, this is how we would cook it back home. And, hot and sour soup is, not just with this vinegar, it's actually with black vinegar. And we actually would put this ingredient in it, to make it extra special. And she just taught those differences and celebrated the similarities and, at the same time. And it was such a way to make art, with such understanding that it was really incredible to experience that. And I wanted to do that somehow, with her. But then she passed. And so I thought, okay, what can I do to honor my mom's legacy? And so in America, she went by Margaret, but her Chinese name is Mei-Ying. Lai Mei-Ying is actually her maiden name, but Mei-Ying Huang is her married name. And so I just really wanted to, continue her lifelong work. And so I thought, okay, this is what I always do. I'm a domestic violence survivor. And so when that happened, I went to make art to heal myself. And I made a series of artwork of other DV survivors and told their stories, through photographs and installations and those things. And that show was called Word Swords. And that was in actually a collaboration of other refugee resettlement agencies. So I was already in this space. And I was thinking okay, Mom always hired all these refugees and immigrants and migrants. I'm going to reach out to these resettlement agencies and I'm going to do another piece of art. And initially it was called Food for Thought. And I pitched it actually for 2 years. No one would listen. And it really took the executive order that came down about the Muslim ban, the travel ban, that people were like, oh, wait, this is happening to refugees, immigrants, and migrants. This is happening to these people. It could happen to me too. I could lose my right if this is happening around the world and people started to care. And we found like-minded people who gave us an opportunity and let us, borrow their restaurant to really like amplify the concept. And we were already working with Chad Hauser over at Cafe Momentum with Innovation Lab. We were working on food insecurity issues in South and West Dallas and trying to figure out, how to use artistic practice to help people understand healthy eating and all those things. And my baby sister was at United Way and was working with him too. And I also knew Leslie Brenner, the restaurant writer that was critic that, was writing for Dallas Morning News at the time. So she made the introduction, and it was like immediately we just hit it off. And, Chad and Sharon Lyles basically said, we'll pay for the groceries. Let's just pilot this thing. And I was like, wait. They were like, no, let's invite like some of our closest friends and let's just pilot this puppy. And I was not ready, but I was like, okay, I just rolled with it. And so it was supposed to be this art project, 1 or 2 pop-ups, and we were brainstorming names, and Break Bread, Break Borders came up. And it had actually been like a travel show, but it got like way too political. So I think it cut from Food Network or whatever. And so we were like, we're just, we're going to use this name as just an art project, and I wanted to do a community dinner where women from war-torn countries, refugee women from war-torn countries, can come and cook and also like share their personal stories. And because I just always remember, like, my mom, when she was cooking, she didn't just like cooked. She would tell these wonderful personal stories about the culture and the heritage behind a certain dish. When we made mooncakes, we knew about those stories. When we made zongzi, we knew, these little rice cakes were thrown in the river to save a general that, that was like murdered by some evil, court, council to the emperor. And like, you learned about history and, like, it was just this, my son makes fun of me. It's like, oh, your mom, you're getting into time warp again, but it was the fun way to learn about your history, your culture, your heritage. And it was such a way to embrace personal expertise, and that was the thing. Like, my mom never thought that her superpowers were cooking. She never thought her superpowers were storytelling. She never thought her superpowers were glued to people. Like, she never thought she was doing anything special, but it was every bit of the special things that I miss to this day, and so I was like, well, how can I share that with the world? And I remember I went to International Rescue and Mosaic Family Services, Human Rights Initiative, all these different resettlement agencies, and asked them, like, I wanted to do this project. And IRC was like, great, we have a community garden called New Roots. And I was like, oh, I love that name. It's so appropriate, right? And they were like, all these, they're already gardeners, and, they might as well be cooking that food with you. They may, and so like, I remember 18 people showed up from like Nepal, Myanmar, Iraq, and Syria. And so like, I remember I had a whole slide deck ready, right? Like to like show them all this stuff, and I'm explaining everything in English, and there was just a sea of deer and headlights until I showed the picture of my mom. Then they understood. So I remember that day, like the ladies from Iraq and Syria, Miriam and Yusra, they got to cook at the commercial kitchen, and they were bossing this whole staff around, including Chad. And Chad was like, I haven't been a fry cook in like 15 years. Jin-Ya, this is really nice not have to be like chefing. And the women felt so empowered. They were like, here's this hotshot chef, they've seen in the news read in the paper, and, they were getting to boss him around. They had a whole staff working for them. they cooked, and then there was a room full of, we got like 80 of our closest friends in that room. And they stood up, the women stood up, and they didn't, just like any typical, cooks or caterers or chefs that, hid in the background, they came and they, picked up the mic and shared their personal stories. They talked about who they were before they came, they escaped war-torn countries. They talked about what it's like to live as a refugee abroad. And they talked about like what it's like coming to America. And they also talked about the experience of cooking with Break Borders. And people were astounded. The community just like applauded the whole experience, because it was such a unique, immersive culinary experience. I had seen other business models like that around the world before. I just hadn't seen it in our own backyard. And our community here was really craving it. And I, as a social practice artist that make art that make a difference, when my community asks for fire, I don't bring it water. And so, the community was asking like, well, how can I get this in, to my family or to my companies? Like, would you be interested in catering? Would you be interested in, being our, private cooks and whatnot? And then the ladies also came to me, and they were like, Jin-Ya, you are so cute. We don't really need another community dinner. What we need are actually jobs. And we love getting paid like this. And we want to like continue to get paid for like cooking. And so I thought, oh, well, my parents were entrepreneurs and my family's, did all this whole thing. I have decades of restaurant experience. How hard could it be? It's been uber difficult.
I'm just going to go ahead and create a social enterprise.
Yeah, it's been super difficult, but also incredibly rewarding at the same time. And so, but yeah, that's how Break Borders was born.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Elise Dickerson, CEO and co-founder of EO Sarah Inc. We are hosting a business pitch competition. We're in search of a female-led, Texas-based company with the chops to make millions. The prize? $10,000. Find your application at empowermentpitch.com. That's EMPOWHERMENT pitch.com. Applications close September 16th. Good luck.
So why did you decide on the social enterprise model, one that is a for-profit and not a nonprofit?
It was the easiest way I could prop it up. Mm-hmm. Being a single mom, my ex helps, but it's not the same.
Then you don't need a board and, all that kind of meeting minutes and all that.
Bylaws and things like that. And also I didn't have the capacity to constantly fundraise. I was working full-time at corporate and, and I really just needed something to just, like stand up immediately. And so I just did all the paperwork on LegalZoom but you can find other people obviously who can do that even faster.
I use LegalZoom too.
Oh, excellent! There you go. It's easy.
It's just so easy.
Comprehensive. It's one-stop shopping, and so I did that. And
I just send you a folder with all your stuff.
Exactly. You're like boom, And we had incredible people who were already in the space, like Chef Rhonda Sweet, who's over at Missional Wisdom. That's a United Methodist church kitchen called Mixed Kitchen that was right over there by White Rock. I had met her through the Innovation Lab as well. And she has a catering business called Sweet Moses that she was like, absolutely, come and use the kitchen. We'll have a access, pro bono for the refugee cooks. And so, it just felt like the easiest way to prop the whole thing up right away. And we get to help people right away. And I would be able to, rally volunteers, workers, and, cooks in different spaces. And that was the best way that we can build capacity at the time. And I really honestly feel like it's the better way. And I wouldn't do that any differently. I think, if we were in a state that did this, I probably would have gone through like a little more like a benefit corporation status, but that is usually expensive. It's laborious to prove your work. And to me, I think making money should not be a dirty word. And doing charity work while making money should not be frowned upon. I think that's the thing. It's, we're building compassion and practicing kindness every day, something that my mom truly believed in. And, something my mom talked about a lot too is, being a good neighbor and doing the right thing. And just to us, it was all those things that we could do right there, right then. And so that's what we did. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think you can still do good and be profitable.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Yes. Yes. And I think, people are continuing looking for business that do good and is making social impact. And, that even just going forward with what we do every day, it's knowing your why and finding your purpose and reaching your goal. Like those are uber important. And I think people are looking for that, not only for themselves, but holding people all around us accountable for it too. And I think that's a must, because it's all this, if we don't do something about it, is not going to be here. My mom worked so hard all her life, for me to grow up in a place that's a little better than the way that she left it, way better, than the way she found it. And I want to do the same for the next generation. I do have a child, but regardless if I had one or not, I would be doing that for the generations to come. Every wave we have to lift as we climb. We have to. And, and I think that's hugely important that, my mom saw that these kind of things weren't being done for women and girls in her space. And so she did it for her girls. And we saw it as fit for us to continue that path, and so we're doing this for more women and girls, and really like removing those barriers to get to that is hugely important to us. And so I think that's definitely something that, we need to look at.
Do you think that your mom focused on being a good role model for you, or was she just doing her thing?
She was just doing her thing.
Okay, so what about you as a mother now? Now that, obviously your mother has such an incredible legacy, you do as well. Are you cognizant of making sure that you're teaching your son these lessons?
Gosh, I think I'm very cognizant about raising a feminist son. I think.
Yes, me too.
Yeah, I think.
Husband.
Yes. My partner is pretty good. George is pretty good. He still has a lot of work, but I feel like Lang has way more events, But yeah, Lang at 13, I think he is so aware of so many different things, but he also has so much to learn. But I think at that age, just him being open to the possibilities, I think has been phenomenal. And I don't know, having the agency to talk about, all these things, I probably never had or didn't know I had the know-hows or the space, the safe space or courageous space to talk about these things when I was growing up, because it didn't feel right. And, my grandparents were built very different from a dad's side. My mom's side they were definitely a lot better. But I think the generations, have come and gone, and, and what I do now, I think I'm just really aware that, what I do, how I react is going to be super normal in the sense that it's just going to be how I do things. And I hope that he thinks about it in a way that, this is how mom dealt with adversity or diversity. And it's okay to cry when you make a huge mistake or, is a giant failure on different fronts. And I feel like that's the thing. It's like us being in this space. Oftentimes, at work, we feel like we're not showing up, and at home, we're failing as a mom. And, you know, out there when we're experiencing all these challenges with social injustices, that maybe we're like really sucking at being that too. It's easy to get into that space and think, you know, that's maybe this whole like 2 steps forward and 3 steps back doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But the thing is, it's, you know, so much of the social justice work we do is work that we may never see germinate in our lifetime.
Right.
But it doesn't stop us from doing it, you know, and that's the thing. It's like, you know, I think I tell Lang a lot of things and I teach him a lot of things. And sometimes he's just watching me fail and then realizing that, oh, that's actually progress to success. That it's okay to make mistakes. It's how you get back up from after you make those mistakes. That's the real key, right? You know, and was it Alice Cooper that said that? I think so. Anyways, but I forget where I got that quote. I have a lot of these little quotes that come out of middle of nowhere. But yeah, I think that's the thing. It's really, I'm really just doing the best that I know how, and how he sees me and how he absorbs, you know, from all those actions taken. You know, hopefully it's just like something positive, you know, that will make him grow as a better person. But I try to be very mindful and intentional about it. But I think it's, you know, sometimes it's like I can barely get cooking early or burning myself. And it's like, oh yeah, I barely just got food on the table so he can eat, you know, before, you know, whatever, coming here. And, it's always going to be like Flight of the Bumblebee, but you know.
Wait, did you make those for me?
No. The cooks did. I did. No. Our Afghan cooks actually did those for you. No, I didn't bake those for you. I would like to take credit, but no. But I was talking about just feeding my son before I come here. But it's always going to be like, just like, you know, it's like I said, Flight of the Bumblebee, like rushing from one place to another and feeling like, oh, am I doing enough and whatnot? And am I teaching him enough? I don't know. But I know that I never thought that probably growing up. I was saying earlier, I don't think I realized a lot of the things that my mom was teaching me, you know, even at the restaurant that I used to grumble about, right? Or coming to America, like I hated everything in the beginning, but then I realized later all the work ethics and all the, you know, core values that I developed from all those experiences. And that's the thing. It's like, you know, I think a lot of the women that we work with, you know, from Iraq, from Syria, from Afghanistan, from Myanmar, from, you know, the Congo, like they understand what we're trying to do and what we're trying to teach. Is because I'm not just a passerby, I'm a passer through. Like I've been through those experiences. They're lived through experiences for me. And so it's not, you know, something I'm just talking about externally, you know, as an outsider. It's like I've been through a lot of those experiences and my parents have lived through those trauma, but it's how we come out of it. And like a phoenix that rises again, right? What that's like, that's really important. And that's the women that we work with continue to inspire me, you know, because of their kids, how they can walk through a desert through 10 days of no food and no water, you know, because they want to provide a better future for their kids. It's like, that's no different than what I'm trying to do for Lang. And all that
sacrifice. Just like what your parents did for you.
Exactly. And I think I just hugely admire that. You know, I may not understand it right away. And I think that's what a lot of people are struggling through these days. There's a lot of toxic narratives around refugees and immigrants and migrants. There's a lot of
and change,
a lot of negative energy around change, around gender, around
equality,
equity, exactly, and
parity,
so, right. And so, so how to really tackle that? I think that's what's interesting. Is, you know, one of the things that we have talked about, what we're doing at Break Borders, is economically we're providing these, you know, opportunities. And, you know, so technically, if you want to talk about it from a business sense, you know, we're doing workforce development programs, right?
Right.
For women. But at the end of the day, it's like Is there still childcare? No. Is there still parental leave, for maternity, absence? No. Is there hidden costs, right, of women being in an entrepreneurial position? What we have to face, I often get asked,
Like access to funding.
Exactly. I often get asked that, and I am typically like the only Asian woman, in the space. And so I joined a lot of different organizations like Orchid Giving Circle, fund with the Texas Women Foundation. There's actually a one for women and then one for Black women, that's Heritage Circle, and then the H100, that's for Latinas. And, so there's like different circles that, really kind of like embrace women and girls and the fierce females factor, right? And then after all the Asian hate crimes in Atlanta, a friend of mine started a group called Women of Asian Descent. And we've been meeting and, creating mindful opportunities to learn about our own history and, how we want to push the culture going forward. And I started out as an artist and very much an accidental entrepreneur, right? I kind of like stumbled into this. And part of me is when I was shouting out so loudly with my artwork was one thing. But then when I got into this entrepreneur space, it's another. And being a woman of color, like screaming for funding and, an investment is hugely different than, a lot of my counterparts do. And like I said, not only do I feel so alone being the only one in this space, but I get tokenized. And that whole interchangeable Asian thing happens a lot. If there's like two other women that's in this space and they're a nonprofit, I'm actually in a for-profit space, but doing charitable work, they'll get us like mixed up, just like my colleague with Neiman's Prior in the fashion world. And so those kind of inequities and disparities continue to exist. And so those systemic issues have to be addressed at a root cause, analysis. And so continuing to unpack that and dismantle all those things are going to be hugely important. And that's why not only did I apply to get into BBVA Momentum, the incubator social entrepreneurship program, that is like a mini MBA that they do. It's incredible because you get access to educators from around the world because they're huge in Spain, Mexico, Turkey, and, here in the US. And so, we had access to professors from around the world that taught social enterprises and things like that. And then, my sisters from Orchid and other spaces, told me, and actually we were catering for the Bush Institute. And so the organizers were like, oh, you should apply for PLS. And I was like, what's PLS? I was like, sure, but what's PLS? And I found out, it's the Presidential Leadership Scholars Program. And for those of you who are interested, it's 4 different presidential foundations that actually get together to groom, 60 scholars every year to have access to advisors and different people that are involved with the George H.W. Bush Foundation, George W. Bush Foundation, LBJ Foundation, and also the Clinton Foundation to groom these leaders from around the nation that are interested in making personal leadership projects that make lasting social impact. And so I applied the first year and didn't get in. And I was super defeated. And my girlfriends are like, gotta keep trying. This is your lane. Like, this is so up your alley. You gotta do it. And I applied the second year and finally got in. And it's been incredible. Like, so many of these scholars, were really how I got to like kind of hang on, during the pandemic, because like we communicate through WhatsApp a lot. And like sometimes you'll just like leave and then, like go to a few meetings and come back and your phone has like 288 messages
Jeez.
And just blow up. But it's a space to share success, failures. What are we stumbling through? Sharing resources and talking about like, it's not just like speaking truth to power, but also shifting those policies and changing the narratives around what is being talked about in these spaces. And that, to me is priceless, as we, move in and out of these different spaces that, what I was talking about in the art space, what I'm talking about in entrepreneurial space, what I'm talking about from the power space, and what I'm talking about in the policy space, like all those are intertwined, right? From what my mom did, just as an immigrant woman experiencing, success, financial success in this space, being a woman of color, like I saw that tons of racial justice is tied to economic justice, right? And so what we have to fight for in this space is so much. And you cannot do this work alone. You have to do it with people. Human beings are group animals. We have to do this together. And, when people continue to work in the silo, it's one thing, they may experience success, but it's not, on a wider level. And that's why, when we're talking about this, it's not just on a local level. I didn't see this happen in our own backyard. And so I started something like this. But look at where I came from. Look at where these women came from. These problems and issues exist throughout the world. There are people that are being crucified, for having education in Afghanistan right now. We cannot forget these women and girls. We have cooks right now, that the ones that bake your cookies, that never had a day of education, never learned how to read or write during Taliban rule. I can't even begin to imagine that. My mom fought so hard for me that it would be a stream of continuous. She saw that straight line to me getting a college degree. That was never a question. But these women and girls were told to stay home and not go to school because they don't deserve it. That is hugely wrong. And I just, they're afraid because they know what happens to women and girls when they get education. And, the UN studies actually shows this.
They find their own voice.
They do. The UN studies that actually have shown this, that women, when they have income, they will literally invest 90% of their income directly into their families and into their communities. And whereas only men will invest actually only half that, maybe about 35 to 40%. I always joke when I'm speaking to a group of audience that the men need to step it up. But that is purely the statistics, so when you invest in women and girls, it directly comes right back to you. This is exactly what we were talking about, that my mom used to say, when you lift your neighbors, you're lifting yourself. This is why these social services, these social good businesses, these social impact companies are hugely important, because when you invest in women and girls, when you invest in your neighbors, you are investing in yourself.
Yes. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Oh, it's such a privilege having you on here, Jin-Ya.
Thank you. It's an honor. Yeah. We're just, trying to spread the word so we can get it to a global level of, thank you for having this platform and where we can talk to people about, what it's like being a global citizen.
Well, thank you for coming on. I mean, it's, part of why we started this podcast is to give more recognition to women founders. And I'm just so proud of you.
Thank you.
So proud of you. And doesn't it feel good to receive recognition?
Oh,
I mean, I don't necessarily mean in an ego way, but I mean to know that people are seeing you. They're seeing your work. They're seeing the mission and the incredible work of the ladies who are cooking.
Thank you.
And and they think it's important.
Yes. I think, you know what, also, I think this is the other thing, is that I think it's important to get recognition, and we love the accolades because the ladies work very, very hard, and I think they deserve all the recognition. But at some point, let's let people who not just only do the talk, but do the walk, and click through, buy the stuff, invest in women and girls, and really step it up, whether it's
put your money where your mouth is.
Thank you. That there's that lovely American saying. that yes, put your money where your mouth is. If you stand for, gender equity and racial justice, like, put your money where your mouth is and invest in the companies and invest in education. Prop the people who are doing this work up and really understand that's how your return of investment is going to come. You have to put your money where your mouth is and not just continue to talk about it, because no one needs that, and because at the end of the day, we love these things, but we just want more money to go help more people.
That's right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the FoundHERs Club, where women aren't just building a business, they are building themselves. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at FoundHERs Club. Or you could visit our website, foundhersclub.com. Send us any questions you have or recommendations for future podcast guests. Even better, you could spread the love by subscribing to the FoundHERs Club on iTunes. And if you really love us, leave us a 5-star review. This will help other listeners just like you find us. Now go share your magic with the world.